Good evening. Welcome to CineDB in Conversation, recorded live from Ouagadougou, Fespaco, in Burkina Faso. Today we are pleased to have a panel discussing about the role of film festivals and film markets, which will be moderated by Hawa Essuman, a renowned filmmaker and co-founder of Manyata Screenings. And our two panelists are Amil Shivji from Tanzania, who's had his African premiere of his feature film Tug of War, or Vutankuvute, here at this time in Fespaco, and CJ Obasi, who's also had his film Juju Stories screen here at, is it a premiere? Yes. It's a premiere of Juju Stories, African premiere of Juju Stories here at Fespaco. I'll hand over to Hawa to start the panel.
First of all, thank you both so much. Phoebe, thank you for the introduction. Gentlemen, really pleased to have a conversation with you. I'm going to do my own introduction just because it'll help me. And maybe just give everyone else a perspective on what it is that you've done and maybe give us a good segue into the conversation. So, Amil, independent filmmaker. First of all, before I even start that, I need to say that both these people are celebrated and lauded and renowned and very well awarded, so we're not going to put that into any of this just because it's there. So imagine that it's there when I say all of this. Amil, an independent filmmaker, lecturer, and founder of Kijiweni Productions, whose recent film, Vutankuvute, is the first Tanzanian film to premiere at Toronto International Film Festival. And CJ Obasi, who is a director, writer, and editor, who's part of the Nigerian new wave collective called the Surreal 16. Really like that name, by the way. And Juju Stories had its premiere at Locarno. Yes. And very pleased to say that his project, Mami Water, just won the Yanenga Fespaco Post-Production Prize. Congratulations. So, I bring up your premieres and the fact that you're all very, very heavy laden with awards and recognition, just so that we can start talking about how it got that way. You got awards at festivals, and I would like to know, when did the festival thing start? With which film? How long ago was it? Amil, do you want to start?
Sure. Thank you, Hawa, for the introduction. That was a very kind introduction. My first film was a short film called Shoe Shine in 2013. And I remember premiering at ZIF, Zanzibar International Film Festival. And we won People's Choice Award, which for me was probably the best award I could win, because my first film, after studying film for 4 years, and making my first film in Tanzania, and then winning People's Choice Award for me was a real sense of recognition and validation that the story that I was telling, the story that I wanted to tell, was received well by the audience that I was targeting. So obviously I learned later on that they didn't even count the votes or whatever, but it was the one that was the most talked about. That's how they considered it. In a place like Zanzibar, which is a small island, it's quite easy to hear the gossip on the streets, which I thought was a beautiful experience in a way of choosing People's Choice Award, you know? And the street corners where they drink their coffee and they eat their kashata, the biscuits.
And they're talking about your film.
And they're talking about, that's how they capture the People's Choice Award. So my first experience with ZIF was really a beautiful one. ZIF also, it being a Tanzanian festival, and I'm not throwing the nationalist card here at all, but I think for us it's super important because we don't have a culture of cinema in Tanzania for a very long time. We had films in the 80s that was state funded, and that happened for around 10-15 years, and then everything got disbanded after the structural adjustment programs and the arts got completely shut down. And then recently there's been a wave from the early 2000s. There was a copy-paste model of the Nollywood system, and that's what led to the thriving bongo movies, right? which is essentially the same as Nollywood, but in Swahili. So to try and make films that are outside of that paradigm was almost impossible. And Shushain was outside. So for me to do that and then to be recognized by a festival, it forced the Bongo Movie collective, because they really are like a collective, they don't let you in and never let you out once you're in. It forced them to reckon with the fact that there were other filmmakers in the room. And I think it was without the festival, I wouldn't have been able to break through that gap, which now, 8 years later, you know, I'm definitely in Bongo Movies, and Bongo Movies has expanded to allow more artistic filmmaking.
Okay. CJ, same question.
Yeah, it sounds, that's an amazing story, and I can definitely see a lot of parallels with, you know, with my my career as well, you know, in that sense. Because I shot my film in 2013, but it was a zero-budget film called Ojuju. It was made for no money, just to do the post-production. We had to do it ourselves, and it took an entire year to do that. And we ended up premiering at a festival called Afrif. It's the largest film festival in Nigeria, one of the largest in the continent. And I didn't really, it was my first festival, first film. I didn't really have any expectations, you know. I was just happy to be there, you know, really genuinely happy to be there. And it wasn't, the festival now takes place in Lagos, but then it was in Calabar, which is more, I don't know, tropical. So the vibe was, you know, really, you know, special. So when during the award ceremony, they gave, the film was awarded the best Nigerian film, you know, that sort of like opened up a whole new world to me as well. And I think after that, immediately after that, before I knew it, I was doing festivals. So to have that as my first film just immediately thrusted me into the world of film festivals. And again, you know, making a film that was, you know, outside of the popular Nollywood, you know, which existed at the time, you know, was also something of a novelty. You know, nobody was making films that wasn't comedy or romance or drama. You know, it was all just within that box. And so to have, you know, this guy from nowhere to come out to make what you might essentially call a zombie film, you know, was just not done. And then to have it awarded in a festival like Afrif, you know, kind of put all the eyes, you know, all the eyes on me. And there's an award hosted by the African Magic. So called the AMVCAs. So I got the Afrif prize in November, and the AMVCAs was just 5 months away. And during the AMVCAs, I was awarded the Trailblazer Award. And so that also opened up, and the reason they gave was because of the film, that they thought it was something new, you know, coming out from Nigeria. And so for me, the festival, I'll always credit Afrif, you know, you know, opening up that, you know, that world and that space. And because it did that for me, obviously other people coming up behind us, okay, so we don't have to do this in order to, you know, come out as filmmakers. We can do other things as well. So I feel like that was how it started for me.
So for both of you then, festivals did something for your films. It changed something for you. Good?
Yeah, I think good, and I'm not going to say good and bad, because I don't think there's any bad, but it did bring up new challenges. Good in the sense that, I mean, the number of filmmakers and networks that I've been able to build through festivals has been absolutely amazing. I mean, it's changed my life. You know, I mean, even the screening yesterday, day before yesterday when I screened my film, It was very late screening, 10:30. It's hot in Wagga. By the time it's 10:30, you're tired. And filmmakers from Kenya that I haven't even met before are there supporting the film. And that's because I've met them in one festival or another festival. And so you build a family outside of your own, in your home country. You build a family in the festival circuit. And you always meet the usual culprits in different places across the world, you know. We've met in Luxor, we've met in different places, you know. Met in Wagga, but we have never met in Nairobi.
True.
So I think there are moments like that I really do appreciate. And it's also a real foundation of support, a real pillar of support. When things are not so great, you reach out to your festival family to see how things are going and seek support from them. The challenges it brought, especially in my home country in Tanzania, was that for a long period, until very recently, it isolated me. Because of the success in the festival circuit, and because of the very stubborn bongo movie scenario in Tanzania, you get divided into this thing called, which I still don't fully understand, but you're a festival filmmaker.
I believe you know something about that. Yeah, you will pick this up.
You're a festival filmmaker, and you're not, you know, bongo movie. You do festival films. And I said, what does that mean? I don't understand what that means.
CJ will explain it to you.
Yeah, and I got that a lot. You know. And because to try and fully understand that, what does that mean in terms of content? Because the films I'm making are in Kiswahili, they're with local cast, local crew. Everything about it is Tanzanian. They do well when Tanzanians watch them. So why is it being called a festival film? And it's different, right? And the fact that the fellow filmmakers aren't taking that route because they weren't knowledgeable about it. And the sense of fear, maybe, or insecurity made it easier to segregate you from that. So
fear of what? Knowledge or
fear
skill
of
or
going
what?
down that road or something? Because I don't understand why it needed to be divided into that. So our struggle for the past couple of years has been to kind of validate the festival experience. And it's been good because more filmmakers now are doing festivals from Tanzania. Language has been a bit of a barrier. You know, we speak Kiswahili, our English isn't so great. So I've been helping a lot of people get into the festival circuit, and ZIF has been pushing it as well. So I see more Tanzanians now doing the festival circuit, but still, when I say more, I mean like 2 instead of 1. So we're still struggling with that, but it was really about this division in the beginning that, and still is there, that I think we really need to find a way to get over.
Same question. I'm happy to share. Yeah.
All right. I would say, I mean, when it comes to, how do I say, just the fact that I agree with everything he said, to be honest with you. In Nigeria, they've called me that. They've called me a festival filmmaker tons of times. But, you know, there's this sort of like, what you might call gatekeepers who decide what gets distributed, what gets seen, what goes to the cinema, what gets maximum PR funding, you know. So because, you know, this is the structure, nothing else gets in. So it's like on one hand, they can actually support their argument with raw data. They can tell you, these are the films that are making money. So they can show you the figures that these are the movies that are making money. But then again, on the other hand, they're not allowing any other films. So it's like, you know, what's the real truth here? So for people like us, we have to find other ways outside the country. And so when you thrive outside the country, you know, it almost feels like, oh, you don't want to show your films, but it's really out of your hands. But yeah, that's the challenge with, you know, going the festival route. For me, I would say. Yeah.
So would either of you or both of you then say that a successful run for your film is how many festivals it travels in a specific amount of time? Does that determine success? I mean, and what role does festivaling play in your film?
Yeah, you know, it's understanding success. It's a sliding scale, and it changes every time. I've made 6 films, Tug of War being my 6th film, and it's the first time I'm working with a producer. I normally produce, write, direct all my other films simply because of lack of resources. So now I'm working with Steven Markovitz, which obviously I think everyone knows is probably one of the most renowned producers on the continent. And I think it's been a completely new experience with the production and even the distribution and how to look at the festival circuit, which has been very knowledgeable, but also it's really a game, right? It's a real game, and the dynamics of power changes when you're a different, when your film is targeting different markets. So with my previous films, it was about getting the film out there. Because remember, as a director-producer, many times the director wins. So, you know, I want the film to play as many festivals across the world, different countries. I'm not too worried about screening fees. I'm not too worried about, you know, the hierarchy of festivals. So I'm really just keen on the film getting shown. But with this film, which is, you know, it's probably one of the biggest films ever out of Tanzania, out of East Africa, I would argue, because it's being a period drama, 1950s, set in Zanzibar. We've had to be much more cautious about the distribution mechanisms because you don't want to lose out on the festival circuit. And this whole A-list, B-list, C-list festivals and how the festival circuit perceives you when you play at a certain festival and when you're not in competition and you're in this section or you're in that section, and it is absolutely exhausting because it's nothing to do with the film. It's nothing to do with the film. No one has fully watched the film and appreciated the content or the role it's playing. It's more to do with kind of the festival itself. And I think that I found that very upsetting that festivals I had perceived, maybe naively so, for the past couple of years, were about films. But now I'm seeing that festivals are about themselves. It's getting quite self-indulgent. And that's a very dangerous thing because these are the only places as filmmakers, independent filmmakers, we go to launch our films. And that's where we really build our repertoire, right? You start getting your reviews in, you start meeting people. But if you're not getting that at the festival, you're definitely not getting that back home. The best you'll get is 7 days at the cinema. And the cinema is in malls, so it's not the everyday Tanzanian who will go there. And otherwise, you just do free public screenings, and you know it's a hit or miss kind of thing. So it's getting, for me, it's been a bit of an eye-opener with this film, you know, seeing how the power dynamics with festivals is becoming quite ruthless, I think.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting thought. My experience with festivals, I mean, I've seen how much of a game it really is, but I think the entire film industry is a game. You know, everything about you know, from the moment you decide to get your film financed, you know, and you're looking for financiers, you have to play the game to find financiers. If you're trying to get government funding, you have to play the game to get government funding or grants, you know. So it's all up until the movie is out there. So it all depends on you as a filmmaker, how much of the game you're willing to play. So for me personally, I would say that I'm not really good at playing games. So I rely on producers to handle that. Recently, I got signed up by CAA, so you know, when it comes to that as well, the agency, you know, they understand the language, they speak the language, and I just think that there's nothing you can do about it. This is the industry. This is what film is. This is what the business is. Sorry. So as long as it doesn't interfere with my storytelling, I'm really okay with it. It's a selfish way to think, but
no, actually,
for me, it's fine.
I'm really glad you said that because it feeds into my next question. can it not help? Can it not help but affect the work? Because it's such a game, because it's such a, wheeler-dealer section of, well, it's a conversation that will determine whether you're in competition or not, or it's what language you use, or what, it's your relationships as much as what angle or slant or topic your film covers, or what the flavor of the month is that year that's going on politically that determines where your film goes. It almost has nothing to do with the film itself and the integrity of the work. So how does it then play into that, considering that the festival statecraft can't help but be played?
Yeah, I mean, I can see how it could completely affect some filmmakers, because now you're not thinking about what you really want to say, because you're thinking of what pleases other people. But that's also like it's an individual choice. You decide for yourself how much of the game you want to play. And for me, I'm not a game player. I don't know how to play games. I have specific stories that I want to tell. And I have, I'm beginning even more to find even more specific ways to tell them. So now I'm not in the mood to play games because I really need to say it the way that I want to say it. So for me, the strategy would be, okay, so this is the game. How do I find a team or people who can help me make that happen? It's not easy, but that's, for me, is more realistic, more of something I can live with than just be helpless and allow, my destiny to be controlled by people that I don't know.
The vagaries of people's considerations.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of my own way to approach it.
Amil?
Sorry, what was the
question?
Just remind me.
Sorry. No, I was just asking that with all the politicking and the negotiation that goes into where your film sits and how your film sits at a festival and how that determines its success or how it's perceived, does that then in turn influence how you make work?
Yeah, it does, definitely. And that's upsetting, right?
Should it though?
I don't think it should. Because I teach cinema at the University of Dar es Salaam. And for example, there's a grant right now that's open up to Tanzanians for development, which is super important because development as a phase is not even something Tanzanian filmmakers think of, right? It's a very Nollywood system. Straight to DVD, straight to market, 3 days shoot. After 2 weeks, you're on the market selling your film. So it's a great grant that's opening up. So I gave a workshop to people who are interested across Tanzania. We did Zoom live, everything. Hundreds of people tuned in. We gave a workshop in Kiswahili about development and how to apply for a grant. Everything from how to write a treatment, how to develop a budget, synopsis, log line, treatment, it's everything that you normally do for an application. And people that even my fellow academics, had never heard of these things. Never. And most of the people in the room are much older than me. And it was a real, I knew it, but I didn't know the extent. That's really the situation, right? And then the one question that always comes up, which every grant will ask you, or every producer will ask you, or every pitch will ask you, is the urgency, right? What is the urgency of your story? And of course, there is an urgency to your story. My film I was writing it in 2018. Former president of Tanzania, deceased, Magufuli, he's been dead, but also he was a dictator. So he was in power and things were really bad in the country, in Tanzania. And the film was almost trying to speak to the current times. So that was my urgency. But as an independent filmmaker, you make a film for 5-6 years. Right. So that urgency is changing. It's constantly changing. So it's to have to pitch for grants and to remind people of urgencies or those kind of things, it gets a little bit repetitive, and also it starts to lose meaning.
But doesn't it get skewed a little bit? Doesn't it get skewed by what it is that any particular fund or organization is interested in at that time.
100%. Like what CJ said, it's completely a game, right? It's how much you want to play that game. You're going to pitch it one way there, and you're going to pitch it a different way there. And I think it's like, it makes me feel really like disgusting and dirty, you know, and because it's not honest to your work. I understand the game. And I play the game too. I mean...
How else?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The reason why we're sitting here and having this conversation is because we've somewhat been able to crack the code, right? But it really sucks to think that this is going to be like what the festival circuit is like. And how are you able to get out of that? Or just, you know, and I think, yeah, getting the producers to do the dirty work is one way, definitely. But like I always think back to whatever I do, how is it kind of reflecting on growing the Tanzanian industry, or at least formalizing it, giving infrastructure. And I think I don't have an answer to that yet, because if I have what I've seen, you know, we make 2,000 films a year in Tanzania. 2,000. That's like 150 films a week or something. If you're making that many films in a year, and you don't have producers, you don't have people who know how to write grants, where do you begin? Where do you begin talking about the festival circuit, you know? So I'm still struggling with that. Because I don't want filmmakers in Tanzania starting to write films about AIDS and HIV and malaria, because they think that's the stories they must tell.
Because that's its own market,
yeah.
right? Yeah. Okay, so I guess looking back at the festival runs that you've both done, what did you learn? And the markets as well, actually, because I think the markets is where the real circus really kicks in. It's almost like the festival is the romance of waiting to watch your film, but the market, you know, is where you... Yeah. Yeah. What would you say you'd learned? And what would you wish you'd learned earlier on?
I remember when I showed Shoe Shine in Berlin, and I just started. I didn't know anything about the festival circuit. I'd done ZIF in July, a couple of smaller festivals throughout the year, and then we're in Berlin in February. It was my big festival, and I went to the EFM, and I just walked around, and a couple of meetings that they'd emailed me, people wanted to meet, and I had no idea what to say. Because I'm just there, and they're like, where's your producer? I'm like, I'm the producer. Like, in the director, I'm like, yeah. And who's your sales agent? I'm like, I'm the sales agent. Because, you know, that's how we do things.
Yeah.
And they just looked at me, and like I'm some kind of joke, you know? And I'll never forget that look that they gave me. And it's fine, I understand. You know, now when I look back, I'm like, yeah, they've come here for business, and here's this kid who doesn't know anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that experience really, it's a reminder for me to like, there's no point of attending these markets if you don't have a system in place for yourself. Really, there isn't. Even when we were at TIFF this year, a lot of it was online, but you know, we didn't have a publicist or a sales agent going in, so there weren't a lot of meetings that could happen, right? Because that's really their job. And I think there's a little bit of, not a little bit, but I think it's almost the norm, is that if you don't have a sales agent, then you're not getting that many meetings, and you're not getting easy ways to distribute your film. And buyers don't want to sit down with the producer as much as they would rather sit down with a sales agent. So I think when those systems are already set in place, then it makes our lives harder. Because as independent filmmakers from the continent, we don't have easy access to distributors. Okay? Because the distributors on the continent are far and few between. I mean, I don't even know many, probably a handful, who can really represent your film and in the international circuit. I could do a better job than most of the distributors I know on the continent, because I can speak that language. But once I go in as a producer, writer, director, half-time editor, and now I'm talking sales agents, you know,
yeah.
It
gets murky with all those hats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of parallels here. I remember when I was my first film, when the movie was after it screened at Fantasia Fantasia Film Festival in Montreal. And it got a lot of buzz and positive reviews and stuff. And so a sales agents reached out to represent the film. And we had no idea at the time, this was 2015, because we never had, first film, no experience. So we had no idea what to even ask or demand from a sales agent. But we ended up going with a really terrible one and got burnt really bad. But thankfully, it wasn't one of those scenarios where you sold all your rights and everything. So it was like a non-exclusive kind of trial basis type thing, which I think was,
It's
quite lucky, yeah, for us. So we quickly got out of that and started doing the sales ourselves. So it was through that we started to really see how the market works and first time filmmaker, how do you get it to audiences, territories, all of that stuff. So it can be difficult obviously for independent filmmakers, but I think if you start getting a degree of success in filmmaking, it's easier to have certain conversations that you wouldn't be privileged to have. And I guess with more success as well, it kind of filters the grade of distributors, buyers that have access to you as well. Because at the beginning you might get all kinds of chaff, but with more success you get, like few quality ones, and then, the higher you go, you get like the more substantial offers and stuff like that. So I think it's a lot of work, but it's the work. For me, that's just how I see it. I think with everything in life, you just have to keep doing the work. And if you care enough about filmmaking, like you say you do, what else are you going to do? It's not like you have a choice anyway. You're going to make films.
Yeah, you joined the band.
Exactly. So I'm just going to keep doing it and grow. And if I do it well enough and consistently enough, the good guys, not the good guys, the high quality offers will come.
Right.
That's how it might sound too optimistic, but that's how I like to see it.
Optimism's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's why we're all here. My next question is, in light of all of that, why do you keep going to festivals, and what would you like to see change in them?
I love festivals. I love film festivals. I love just that feeling of a premiere. All this while you've made your film. Now, this adrenaline rush of I'm about to show it to a new audience. It's quite nothing like it. It's a rush, and when they like it, there's also nothing like it as well. So just for this reason alone, I love film festivals. The fact that they can provide this feeling to you as a filmmaker to validate the reason why you make films, and also to give the audience this, this feeling of not knowing what to expect, walking into the cinema. What are we going to see? I think it's invaluable and it's necessary for the industry, in the film space, film festivals, just for this reason alone. The other thing is festivals are becoming more, Instagram driven, they are becoming more social media driven. So it's about how many clicks they can get, how much traffic they can draw, sort of all these things. And I just think they are gimmicks and distractions and completely unnecessary to what film festivals are supposed to be doing. And I think film festivals should always be about the filmmakers and the films first, before superstars or whatever. But then again, people will be, I'm saying that because I'm a filmmaker. But there really isn't films without filmmakers, so, why not make it about filmmakers first before anything else? So it doesn't matter if, if it's a known filmmaker or a celebrity filmmaker. If you thought his film was good enough to be in your festival, just treat them decently. That's all. Treat them with the same level of decency that you would accord, the guy with 1 million followers. Because if he didn't have your movie, you wouldn't have a festival. So, that's just the one gripe I have with film festivals, where the value is placed on, the star over the one who's actually making you exist as a festival. Right.
Yeah, I mean, completely agree with what you're saying. There's really no other feeling like it when you're having a premiere or when you're screening to a room that's full of people who've come there to watch your film. You've poured your heart out on the screen, and they're there to receive it. It's really absolutely wonderful. I remember many of my screenings, and I mentioned Zanzibar because they have this amazing amphitheater that's 500-600 people shoulder to shoulder watching the film. And I mean, if someone's laughing, you feel it next to you, and you have to laugh because you're like, okay, this is happening. So it's really a wonderful experience. It's communal. It's a gathering. It's a real source of joy. Watching films like at the drive-in kind of feeling, and you don't need to be a filmmaker to appreciate that. Like, everyone likes that feeling. Yeah. So I think going to festivals has really given me that, and I'm definitely going to keep going, even though it's a love and hate relationship sometimes. Trust me. But I think it's really a home for us, and I know there's the A-list, B-list hierarchy, and I honestly don't care about that. I remember I played with my previous film, T-Junction. We were doing some fairly okay festivals, and we did Seattle, and we did some other big ones. And then we did a screening in a church in Lübeck, a town in Germany. And then we did which was like a projector. It was the priest, and it was such a small thing, but it still meant the world to me, because you have people who are dedicating their time to come and watch your film and engage with it and ask you questions, and you can see them smiling at the moments where they're supposed to smile and laugh, and the moments where you want them to laugh. It's really about meeting your audience, like more than halfway, like really engaging with them, getting to know them, making new friends in that moment, So I think festivals are super important because they offer that to us. I think when we start looking at festivals, and I know it's a must, it's part of the game, but when we start looking at them as career moves, that's where you can get a bit frustrating because you're aiming for something that you feel is deserving, but then if you don't get it because that festival isn't looking at that kind of agency at that kind of period of time, or it's not fashionable at that time, then you're kind of, squared off and pigeonholed somewhere else. And I think that's really frustrating. And as career moves, it can really destroy you. It can destroy you and your films. So I think as necessary and important as that is, the festival route to distribute, we have to remind ourselves, especially as independent filmmakers from Africa, we have to remind ourselves that we have an entire continent that is waiting for our films. They're twiddling their thumbs, waiting for our films, and we have to find ways to show them.
To make them. Yeah. I think I asked you what you would like to see change at festivals, no?
I don't know if I answered it. What I would like to see change at festivals, I think, similar to what CJ said earlier, I think it's important for festivals to open up and to treat their filmmakers with a sense of dignity. Just basic stuff, we're not asking for the world. It's just basic stuff. The celebrity filmmakers and the non-celebrity filmmakers. There's some of us who really don't care about the red carpet and those kind of gimmicks. I have like one suit in my wardrobe that I wear every time, and I don't even wear it when I don't have to. So it's really, we're there for the films. We're there to speak to the audience. We're not there for the press and this and that. Sure, that helps the film, but we are there so that people can watch the films and we can talk about it with the people. So I think if there can be more emphasis on that, and there are festivals that do that, and it's amazing. They're normally smaller festivals, And it's bloody amazing because you really get to speak to the people and you hear the way they're talking about the film and you hear the way they talk to you about the film. And I think that's crucial. So you could see more of that at festivals, yeah.
Just owning what goes wrong and just treating people as people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then, you know, it affects also like how many screenings do you get, or the kind of spaces that your film is being screened at, and all those kind of things get affected based on like your stature in the film world. And I think that is not a fair approach, you know, for especially independent filmmakers who are maybe starting out in their careers, who made an amazing film, but they're not getting that space because they don't have a name in the circuit. I mean, we see that in other industries, and then we're like, no, that shouldn't happen to us. Yeah.
Yeah. Fair point. What is it that African film festivals do well? What is it that they do well?
I think from the African film festivals that I've gone to, there's a sense of informality that really allows that to happen. It allows that connection, you know, whether, you know, you have a film that's opening the festival or closing the festival, you're still able to really speak to the people, you know. Been to like smaller festivals in Lake Natron or in Kigali that are done just at the Alliance Francaise, for example. You know, just you find screening spaces that have a projector and a generator in case the power gets cut out. Like those kind of, you know, festivals.
Yeah.
But it's really people-oriented. Like it's, because it's small, their focus is getting the film screened. And I think those kind of things are super important. And I think that's something that we do well on the continent. We get the films screened to the people. I think when I was in FESPACO in 2019, it was amazing to see the number of Burkinabe people coming to watch the films. I think they would get a day off from work officially if they asked for it to attend a FESPACO screening. And the lineups would go around the FESPACO headquarters around twice. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was really amazing to see people having the culture of cinema. And when we screened in 2019, we had 2 films here. Like the cinemas were full of people of Burkina Faso, you know, and that was just, and I didn't have French subtitles. I had English subtitles to my film, and people were still laughing and enjoying the film, and looking like T-junction, and I'm like, yeah. So it was good. It was good, you know, and I think that those are things we do well on the continent.
A few things. I would say, other than time, I think we do a lot of things well. One of them would just be obviously if you go to a big international festival in Europe or North America or whatever, from the moment you arrive as a filmmaker with a film in the festival, everything is planned out from, you know, the second you step in to the moment you leave. So I guess that's a little bit on the informality, and so you don't have time for anything else other than, you know, show your film, do a Q&A, do a press, and get back on the plane. So I guess it's just that, you know, just that lack of, you know, lack of personal touch. I mean, there are still festivals that have this personal touch. I mean, I was in a festival called Africadia in Vitoria-Gasteiz in Spain, and it's just a small, very small festival, but very intimate, and all the filmmakers, whether you had a film showing on that day or not, after the day's screening, everyone has dinner together. I don't know, I just thought that was really special. A festival like FESPAC obviously is big, so you can't do that, but you do have, you know, people are in Taxi Bruce, you know, if someone is, you know, somewhere else, and, you know, so it's a communal kind of thing, and I love that. I really do. And I also like the fact that people really genuinely, support the films. Like they come out, they support the films, and they talk about it in a very energetic way, as Africans do. So I think we have our own way of interacting with films that is quite unique. I found that, we've screened Juju Stories in a few countries, but this was the first time we screened on African soil, with a huge audience. And it was interesting to see how some of the things that sort of get lost in translation, the audience got it, and they laughed at it, they reacted exactly how we expected they would, So for me, I feel like African audiences have a whole different way of reacting to films, to interacting with films. Even when they watch films that are not by Africans, they have their own way of interacting with those scenarios. And for me, that's just its own unique and special thing. So I don't know if there's any other particular thing that I really like, but other than that, I feel like just that personal, communal feeling on ambience, is something that you don't get a lot of outside of the continent. I've been to film festivals in Africa, and I can say that every single one of them has this, even if they don't have anything else.
Right.
So, yeah.
I guess the only thing that I have to ask is if there's anything else you'd like to say, either of you. I've personally really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much. My relationship with Amil would not have happened had it not been for festivals, really. So
now I remember that we're Facebook friends. When you said Emil, I thought it was E-M-I-L, not A.
A-M-I-L.
Of course.
Yeah.
Tug of war.
And it's really wonderful to speak to filmmakers about the work and also what brings you to your work as people, as human beings. So, and I've really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you very much. Is there anything that you would like to say that I haven't touched on?
Actually, I just really wanted to emphasize the point CJ made about the intimacy that African festivals give us. I've definitely felt that throughout the years, and as much as the Western festivals are important and the bigger ones, it is very machine-oriented. It's like A, B, C, you do those things and then you move on with life. But the smaller festivals in Europe and North America and the festivals on the continent, it's so intimate. You know that the people you want to meet, you can grab a drink with them at the side canteen, on the kiosk on the road, and those kind of things, because it speaks to our culture. That's who we are as people. And I think that is something that we actually place down on us when we go outside, because we can't speak to those cultures, that everything is very much business oriented. For us, it's very communal. So I think that's something that's beautiful about our festivals. And if anything, I feel the Western festivals should learn from us about that.
May they all have a taxi, Bruce.
Yes.
Really.
Yeah, taxi Bruce. I guess as a final note, thank you, Hawa, for inviting us to this panel. And thank you, Goethe, for doing all the work that you do across the continent in terms of film. This has been a wonderful panel discussion for me as well. One of my highlights of the festival. It's been a bumpy ride for me. But thank you so much for inviting us. I really do appreciate it. And these are the kind of conversations that really help build us and our networks, but also, I learn from what CJ is doing. And I want to take that back to Tanzania and speak to the filmmakers that I'm lecturing, that I'm teaching. If I see they have similar work like CJ's, I reach out to him. Can you speak to this student who wants to do that kind of work? That for me is everything. It means so much. And those are the networks I really get excited about.
Right. Yeah, cross-pollination is what it's all about, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks to Goethe Institute. Thanks for very incisive questions. Sometimes you know these things, obviously, that's why you're answering them, but you don't really think too deeply about them because it's your life, so you don't really have time to
Heads down. Work is continuing.
Exactly. So,
Yes.
but you know, it's also a learning experience for me, even though I'm the one answering the questions. Just to to really think about film festivals as well, especially having a film in post production, to even think ahead of how I want the festival life of the film to be, and how I want festival audiences to receive it, and what I would expect, and so on and so forth. So it was great to meet Amil. Tug of War, heard great things. Wish I saw it, but I know I'll catch it. Thanks everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you all very, very much, Cine TV, for the platform, for the opportunity for the conversation. I believe you can catch this online at some point, along with lots of other conversations that will be coming up and that have happened. Thank you. Good night.
Yeah, thank you all for the very vibrant discussion, and I'd like to thank the local Goethe Institute here in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, for allowing us a space and for organizing for us to be able to have this conversation. Thank you very much.